It's Dr. Judith Briles, and we're back for another great episode of the AuthorU-Your Guide to Book Publishing podcast. And as always, before we kick off, we started this year, we went kind of commercial free. We have sponsors, of course, so I always let you know up front to do kudos, to do the thanks to the TogiNet Network, to the awesome Rebecca Finkel, who has designed many of my books, personal books, both covers and interiors. She is the ones that I turn over all my swag to, whether it's bookmark, whether it's banners, where it's like, Judith's got another goofy idea. How can we turn that into an image that we could use on our book tables and the like? Rebecca is at ftgd.com. And then also the amazing Nick Zillinger, who has been involved with several of my books, several of my author books. In fact, this morning we uploaded another one called The Joy Molecule that he did all the interior design and cover for. So we're excited about that. So thanks to those who make it possible to be with you. Then I always like to start a show before we get into introducing our amazing guest to us is with a quote from my little book, How to Create Snappy, Sassy, Salty Success for Authors and Writers. And the quote, I always just open it up randomly and say, okay, we're going to go with that one. This one today is: the author's first job is to write a great book. The second one is to market. There is no third. With that said, we're going to be talking about the part of marketing a book you've already written with your fabulous voice and words that others can hear. With me today is amazing voice coach, Rachel Alena. She grew up in a musical family, so she's got that gift. I don't have that gift. I can't carry a tune, but I love music, and I love the sound of words and the music they bring to my ears and to my imagination and to my understanding with that. She comes from Los Angeles, so we are both hometown LA girls. I'll let you know that. She dreamed of voicing Disney cartoons, if you can imagine. By the time she was 13, she was a paid studio singer long before she was ever into what's known now today as the voice-over world. She eventually sang and voiced Cinderella for children's toys. These days, her voice has been heard on thousands of projects. She's a talent and an agent, and she's a coach, and she helps authors like you and me and actors find their vocal superpowers to bring their stories to life. And I can't tell you how important it is to understand that. I revealed to Rachel when I was first introduced by a mutual client that the two of us have, that I took voice lessons long ago to actually lower my voice a couple of octaves instead of having it high, or when you get a little nervous, it goes, or sometimes screechy, which is crazy to me, and I hear it all the time. And I always say when I'm watching TV times, they need a voice coach. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it was fun. I'm curious if do you have different voices that you use yourself?
Yes, in fact, I just did 10 voices in 30 seconds last week for somebody. They asked me if I could perform that, and so I did. All the time. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can you do that for us?
I don't know if I can do 10, but let's see. Why don't we do? Let's see what I can do. This is off the top of my head.
I love that.
Let me think for a second just to come up with a plan, because you have to, just to say this, you have to plan. If you go and just voice without a plan, they're not going to sound that distinct. Let me pick a couple. I'm going to go, let me grab a pen here. Let's do bratty teen. Let's start with bratty teen. Then let's go mom. Then let's go, let's see. Nerd. Let me see if I can come up with two more. If not, I'll just do those, but I think I can come up with two more. Oh, obviously, cartoon character. And then let's go news anchor. Who knows
Okay.
who knows? And I apologize in advance. Who knows the words I'm going to
Oh
say because
no,
you are the word
I did not.
expert. Give
Yeah,
me a
I did not
phrase.
tell
Give me a
you.
phrase,
Oh,
please, and I'll do it off with a phrase, an easy phrase, something relatively easy.
oh, okay. Well, I was going to take some of the points we were going to talk to, but we could do something like that. Um, ooh, I can see the snarky teen coming out with this line right now. It's actually a line you sent to me. It was wonderful meeting you last week, and I'm looking very much forward to the podcast we're going to do.
All right, you
Something like
ready?
that. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I'm so looking forward to the podcast next week. Julie, you are going to have a ball at the podcast next week. There's a podcast next week. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I don't know. Oh my God. There is a podcast, and I am so looking forward to it. Tonight at 2 p.m., actually 11 o'clock a.m., a podcast. I'm looking forward to it. See you there.
Well, there you go, some magic, everyone, going on. And she hit on so many things in so many ways with the tone, the pacing, the pausing, the little add-ons. And isn't that what we hear all the time? And yet, one of the struggles, and this is what that Rachel is working with, is with one of my clients who's going to be doing the narration of her nonfiction book. And I'm a huge, huge believer that authors should do the narrating on their nonfiction book. Fiction, I'm going to pull them away in most cases on it, but nonfiction, and I did one of the reveals I did when I did my memoir, and I was talking about the death of my son. I choked up uh, during the that, and my coach, like Rachel does, and the engineer said, "No, no, we're not taking it out. Leave it in. It's right. It feels right on that." So it's. I think that one of the real skills I think is to create the environment for the listener that they're having like a conversation with you, that you're there in the room. I mean, that's my kind of my take. But I'm looking for when I do this stuff, Rachel.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And when I talk to people, that is the key element. Like, when they're listening to a voice actor, a lot of times people will say, I didn't really get to know the author. It's more about hearing a lovely voice, which is a great thing, and that can be a real strong attribute. But
Hmm.
getting to know the author is hugely important. I mean, it's part of what sells the book, I think.
I think so. And it's the juicy story. I just did a couple before you and I started. In 8 minutes, I banged out 4 videos.
Wow.
you know, to for the Authors Hall of Fame event that's happening on September 6th, and to try to bring alive the excitement with the queen of romantasy right now, Rebecca Yarros, who is being inducted
Wow.
to in person, who will be talking and sharing some of her stories, to Jim Butcher, who I adore, who writes the adventures on Netflix and fantasy on there. And then Jim Davidson, who I could feel him as he's climbing Mount Rainier, and all of a sudden steps into an ice crevice and goes, shoo, and he's down. And those people are all there in person to tell their stories. It's very
Fantastic.
exciting.
Yeah.
So how do you do that in 50 seconds? You get it across, hope people show up. There's a few seats left, and to get them there. So that's doing that. And I don't think I ever could have done it if I hadn't gone into public speaking and speaking on the platform for 40 years, and taking the time to invest in myself and my voice so I would have a better connection with my audiences. That's what we're doing, everybody, today. Totally new. All right, so let's get into why does the voice matter? Why does
Well,
our
you mean from an author's perspective
and the listeners'
and the
perspective?
listener's perspective? Well,
Mhm.
when somebody voices their own material, their authenticity comes through. And that is the connection. You know, there is not a person in the world who has walked the miles that you've walked. They have
Yeah.
not felt like
Mm.
you were talking about your loss. There is not a narrator in the world that you can pay all the money in the world to who has experienced what it is that you have experienced. So that level of depth, there are strong actors who can portray it for sure, but it's different. It's different. And in your own book, your voice matters because there are experiences, nuances, priorities, things that are solely important to you as the author that you want to bring forward. And so the subtleties of that can only come through in your voice, if that makes sense. So, branding and recognition, that's another huge one. For those people who want to write series and have themselves known, if they're able to have their voice be the voice of their brand, like Brene
Mm.
Brown might be. She's the voice of her brand, and that has been super successful for her. I think that's a huge part of what people love about her. Being able to share your emotional truth, marketing value, having it be said that it's narrated by the author. Then that's a double whammy. You're a great writer and you're a great narrator. And also you have a little more pride and creative control. So those are reasons that
Yeah.
I think the voice matters. I mean, I was assuming you think the same thing, whatever you think, but that's my
Yeah.
opinion about it. Plus, I'm all about self-expression, and I believe
Yeah.
in self-expression, however you can do it. I believe we're all here as creative creatures to share, and that human connection, which is why people love your podcast and why we're here today and why our student brought us together. It's because that human connection that comes from the voice and from people, it moves us all. And I think personal voicing I think that's part of the reason people love the audiobook so much. It's becoming more and more important in connecting us in a world that feels a little more disconnected.
Hmm. And one of the challenges for all of them is how do I market the audiobook? But that's a different animal
Mhm.
in talking about because audiobooks kind of just sat around and minded their own business and they're definitely audio. But now when I'm in a bookstore, Rachel, now that where people were, although the great majority of all books are print books, don't I'm always amused at the naysayers that came out as soon as ebooks came. Everything's gonna disappear and there's no more print. That's just not true. That is just not true. So well over 60% of all sales are print in the hand books, but they're augmented. And what the audio and the digital has become the accessories to support them. So people are shifting between all of them, which I find
Hmm.
pretty common today, especially the audio and the ebook world.
Hmm.
Of
Interesting.
yeah, they go back and forth. And Amazon does have with the ACX the Whisper Sync, and I'm assuming you're aware of that, where you can you can close your ebook and you can turn on the audio and it go and picks you up right there.
Wow, I was not aware of that. No,
Okay,
yeah, no, didn't know that.
yeah. And then if you close your audio down and you pick up the E, it, it'll bring you back and pick you up
Amazing.
so you can go forward. So I think that's pretty awesome sauce for
Yeah.
that crowd. And I also come into the deals. So let me just do a lot on everybody in doing that. And when you do an audiobook, please adjust your swag and let people know that you have print and ebook and audiobook. Let them know that. I put that on my bookmarks now, available in print, ebook, and audio. And it does, a lot of people will come in and say, I don't have, I only read audio. I get that in bookstores, Rachel. And I give them my new bookmark. It's got a QR code. And I said, just take a picture of this. You can just go right in and you can pick up the audio this way. So let's be smart, people. Let's be smart. All right. So your voice matters. It's the connection. And I love the feeling that we can go into someone's wherever you're listening to you. Who knows where you're going to be in the house, or car. Cars are huge audio deals, and Libby and from the library system to pick up audio that way. So you want to take advantage of that. All right. So what about you talk about magic moments? Give me some examples of what a magic moment is. How do we create it? Are they just spontaneous or can they be choreographed? What do you think?
Oh, 1,000% choreographed. I mean, in the
Ah,
writing, they are created, right? When
mhm,
you're voicing magic moments, a huge thing that you want to remember is that every single story has turns. And when you're voicing, there are emotional turns and there are rhythmic turns. And rhythmic turns is
mm,
something that a lot of people aren't aware of. So you can have somebody who will say, I understand that I might have a situation where, for example, a child is lost, and that's a pain point. And then she's
mhm,
suddenly found. And we voice that in a way where we give our listener a feeling of a little bit of pain, slightly, and then
uh-huh,
a feeling of relief. That's how we create a magic moment. But there's
uh,
also moments where in your story, it's a little less dramatic. The information might be more informational, it might be more factual, or it might be a little bit more of the same. And you can still create magic moments that way by varying your rhythm. So, for example, if you were saying, I'll use your example from earlier, if you were
uh,
saying, I'm looking forward to my podcast tomorrow. It is going to be fantastic. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go to the podcast. But then when I'm done, I'm going to see my son. And I'm really excited about that. And then maybe we'll meet for another podcast. You see right there, smooth audiobook narrator,
mhm,
smooth audiobook narrator, telling my
mhm,
story. Change the rhythm in the middle, then back to my original
mhm.
story. That's a rhythmic moment where I took something that's not that exciting, but made it a rhythmic moment to create a magic moment out of that.
Well, I love that. I mean, and let me also uh, suggest to all of you, because this is marketing. Remember, it's write the book, market it, and this is this element we're in, is that why not make a few videos or teases that you can get out and shoot them into YouTube, and that to tease your audiobook coming.
Of course.
And yeah, those and we're talking like less than 30 seconds, really tight, tight, just like the awesome Rachel did when I threw a line at her and said, "Can you give me five voices?" I'm already imagining the tone of the bratty teen. I have heard it so many years.
And I have lived
I
it. So there we go. No.
yeah, we've heard it and we've loved it. Exactly. And it's like, we even then when my husband and I have watched movies and there's the really he says, I cannot take another team. I cannot take another team attitude movie. Got it. We're out.
Hmm.
Yep, we got it. All right. So talk about pacing and using your voice. And I think that one of the things that helped me, because I was a speaker and I was on stage and I did have to pace, and also the power of silence sometimes in the pacing.
Well, you know what I find to be very interesting about pacing is when I first started coaching, I started coaching about 9 years ago because I was a talent at a talent agency in Denver, and they asked me to coach their voice actors. That's how I started. I just didn't want to tell them no. But at that time, uh, audiobook narration pacing was said to be at about 125 words per minute.
Oh,
Fast forward to
okay.
today, and my understanding is it's about 150 now, which is interesting to me.
Oh,
Unless you have a different number, that's the number that I
I
have been
don't.
told. 150 commercials are usually 160, but they were also slower at that time.
Oh,
And so things have changed. Things have
oh,
sped up.
Rachel, I think some of these commercials are motor mouth.
Yeah.
They're absolutely motor. I'm going, what? What?
Well, all of it follows culture. So acting in general and voice, using your voice for acting, whether it's audiobooks or commercials, we're following culture. So and by the way, it changes every couple of years depending on what's happening socially and politically and everything else. It makes a difference with regards to pacing and with regards to everything else. So it's
Mhm.
kind of an interesting thing that you would say, oh, it's really fast. And my hunch is you probably have been listening and speaking for a period of time. So your ears are used to a certain style. Whereas when I work with a millennial, those guys, they just automatically mumble more and they go faster in general, not always. That is their culture. And so it's just the way. And then when I work with authors that are younger, it's a little bit more that style because that's their culture. And so that's what it mimics. But with regard to answer your question, you want to slow down with pacing when you have weight and gravity. That's something, pause before key lines. Silence can be powerful as long as your pacing is relatively rhythmic and smooth. And then you can speed up slightly for excitement or urgency. Again, you want to keep the overall pacing at about, I would say, 150 in today's market. So you want to have those special nuances within the overall pacing.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also, you said a really important word here just a minute ago, culture.
Mm-hmm.
Cultures are different. And there's certain things that I thought if I hear another one of the culture, I said, I can't take that. I only can take so much of it. And that when I did, and doing kind of a little shift, when I did a lot of the speaking in the South, which ties in with your speed, I had to slow down.
Interesting.
I had to, if I was doing a full day program, I would knew that if I could get 50 to 70% in of what I would normally in the 150 words a minute, the deal. If I could get 50 to say that was a home run. And I think that we do need to realize who is our audience. So age, you said the age, what are you going through? And sometimes that you do need to slow it down or you do need to speed it up a little bit. And it's just something I tuned in to over there. I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? I can't get all this information out that I normally get out. And there was nothing wrong. It just the audience had altered.
Yes. Yes. And that is an interesting thing, from a coaching perspective, because I coach voice actors as well. And I'm a talent agent. That's what I do during the day. I work, with voice acting talent. And it is fascinating. It's fascinating the type of talent that are hired and for what roles, and also being beyond your own target market. I know audiobooks are more specific niche in that kind of a way, but generally speaking, there's a whole, when I work with a writer, some of my very first questions are, how do you want to be perceived? What would your brand look like? And who are you talking to? And most people say, well, everybody. And I say, okay, yes, you're
No,
talking to everybody, but let's
no,
narrow
no,
that
you're
down.
not. No, you're not.
Yeah. And that's always a really important question because, and then finally, of course, the most important question is, how do you want them to feel? What is this relationship with your audience that you want it to be? Are you sitting in a room where, you're smoking a cigar, telling your story to a few people in a cozy chair similar to the one you're sitting on? Or are you on a beach, invigorating people about some sort of mission that they're going to go on? What is that imaginary thing? That's kind of how I look at it.
I love it, Rachel, that you're using your hands because I use my hands a lot. And I've always told people, like when we're doing uh, interviews, when it was just voice, some of the most effective interviews I had were like at 2 a.m. in the morning when I've got someone interviewing me, and all of a sudden, where it was the local thing and it's gone all of a sudden coast to coast because so much of the bandwidth has come down. And we would have these great times. One of the tricks I did was I always kept a mirror, small mirror,
Oh.
in front of wherever I was speaking from, wherever my desk, whether it was my office or wherever, that would remind me to smile,
Oh,
uh,
interesting.
to keep that coming through. And I also sometimes I would pick up, I would move around and because more energy would flow.
Mm.
In the morning, you need it sometimes.
Oh, 1,000%. That is something people do not understand at all. Using
Okay.
physicality generally in their narration work. Your body, your facial structure is designed in such a way that if you were to lift your eyes, smile, and put your face in an upright position, you
Yeah.
then end up, lifting your soft palate a little bit, which creates more space, which for some people is what you want. Now, going back to culture,
Musical palette.
well, if you are voicing, let's say I'm voicing a finance book, and so I want it to be educated, lifted, and this physicality then works. Opposite land, let's say you're voicing a romance or something where you're voicing something that's geared towards a different environment. You may want to slouch your shoulders and kind of maybe be a Cheshire cat and give less overacting so that it's a little easier to listen to. Or if you're doing something where it's a relatable story, where you really want to have your listener not feel like you're talking at them, but you're talking with them, you can use your physicality to create that somewhat.
Yes, well, and physicality. You're using such great words. And bring it up. And I've also found that in some of the cultures,
Mhm.
that a lot of times they don't enunciate things. And let's go back to the mumble thing.
Mhm.
That if you're a mumbler, and I know that when I was getting really tired, I would pick up a list,
Oh,
and I
okay.
knew I had to stop.
I get that. Well,
Yeah.
mumbling's an interesting thing. I know you're going to think bad coach, but articulation in audiobook narration is essential. And you must be able to understand. That being said, depending on the audience, a little
Mhm.
mumbling can go a long way in creating a relationship. Because sometimes, and I'm not talking about mumbling, like complete mumbling, but sometimes
Mm.
over articulation is a big problem. It's one of the biggest problems that I work with because
Mm.
people end up talking like this. And when you do this, people don't
Not
feel you're
normal.
relating.
Yeah,
Exactly. So a
not
little
normal.
bit of mumbling while still articulating, and maybe mumbling's not the right word, but a little bit more loose lips can be effective sometimes.
Ooh, reminds us of our joint client. Loosen their lips.
For sure, which I am reading, by the way, in
Yeah.
the hardcover, the book. Love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Learning a
Love
lot.
it. So that's everyone. That's a shout out to Ellen Naylor, who comes from the competitive intelligence field. And I had the pleasure of working on her first book, which was on, win loss. It's an analysis, it's a branding, it's companies going, bringing, why is the product working? Why is not? Should we bring it in and bring ours? Is there a competition factor? Is there an opening? Blah, blah, blah. But she took that whole to another level. And her book is called Loosen Their Lips: How to Really Get Out of a Conversation What You Really Need to Get Out of on that. So, and that's why Rachel is here with us today, because Ellen said, Judith, you need to have her on your show. So,
Thank you, Ellen.
yeah. So, anyway, get the book. It's on Amazon. Easy peasy. All right. So, on this, what do we do about some of the jargon? One of the things I have trouble with is when they go into certain jargons that I like I need another degree in language or something. I can't pick it all up. Is that more habit, or is that for a certain audience?
I want to make sure I
Um,
understand. Are you referring to if you're narrating a book that has a lot of jargon in it?
yes, yes. Or how does the narrator handle it when they get a book
Well, generally
with a
speaking,
lot of jargon?
yep, that's a great question. Generally speaking, you want to define what it is in the first place. So that might be, and this might be the worst example you've ever heard, but if I were
Mhm.
giving you, here's a green pen in my hand, and if the jargon for green pen were Gren, you might say, well, I picked up my Gren green pen. And once you've done
Okay.
that, everybody knows what that is. So you put it in like an aside to make sure that people understand what it is you're talking about. Does that make sense?
And you do it in an aside voice
In an
too.
aside voice. So
Oh,
to that point, if you have something in a parentheses, so when you narrate an audiobook, your listener cannot see, obviously. They can't see all those nuances. So you have to use your voice to show this is in a parenthesis. This is
or
the
this is an
parenthesis.
M dish, or this
Yes,
is an afterthought.
exactly. Yes.
Hmm.
And some things you eliminate because they don't make sense when you are narrating as well. So, but you generally introduce it once, you give it, you show what it is verbally, and then that way the listener knows. Same thing with visuals, if you have a bunch of visuals.
Right. So this is the note to all of you who are doing your own narration. You know what those are. But if you're hiring someone to do the narration, and I've had a couple of clients, nonfiction, they went into a studio, had it all set up, had a coach, had the engineer, and they sucked. Literally.
Yeah.
It just didn't work. And he ended up hiring a narrator. And what I did suggest, it might be a good idea that you could do just a few opening lines introducing the book to the reader and and that the narrator, and let it there's a segue that you can do to turn that loose. It does happen on that. So if you're going to have someone narrate your book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I think it's a good idea that you have a really heart to heart with the narrator so they know what the asides are. They know how to handle them. No one's ever talked to me about that before, but this is just kind of flowing through my brain right now, Rachel, that there needs to be.
Yes, and that conversation is so important. And truly, not everybody should narrate their own book. There are a voice must be, there must be some sort of connection, and it must be somewhat easy to listen to in order for an audiobook to really be successful. What you don't want, I mean, I've had a number of book deals as a narrator, and I narrated for one author who I just love. We're still friends to this day. She did not have the kind of voice that was really easy to listen to. And so she had to bring somebody in. But when we had that conversation, it was, will you be the longer term voice of my brand? This is my story and how I view it. And we had whole conversations about, what that looks like, what the same questions I would ask an audiobook or a writer, same questions, except for a narrator. Have those conversations. It's very important. At the end of the day, the most important thing to me is the essence of the writer. When you write, right, I'm sure you teach people to bring their essence into the story. So that essence must exist in the voice actor if you're going to choose somebody else. You have to be sure that they have an understanding of the depth of who you are as a writer.
Right. So, and then to expand that for all of you listening in, that's your voice. Your essence is the voice, what you bring to the party, your vision, the whole package of it as it goes along with that. So, tips. Let's talk about some tips here. That when you are, when Rachel and I first talked, I was talking, oh my God, here I have an in here, and I mean, a lot of times when you use filler words, you're up here thinking of what you're going to do, and what you want to do is slash it as soon as possible. It's like being in a conversation. Well, I'll ask all of you, how many of you in conversations that they've used word like maybe 20 times in 2 minutes? They're in a bad habit, I think I would call that. So, Rachel, how about what are some of the common bad habits that we have in our speech that could easily carry into not only our writing, but that audio studio that you're just unconscious about?
First of all, there's two main ends of the spectrum. There is monotone. That is where you read word for word without variation. And what happens is your listener zones out. And what I would say is the fix for that, obviously, is vary your pitch, vary your pace, and your energy level. You want to read for the meaning, not just words. Think of what you want your listener to feel. And of course, I always go back to feeling. The opposite of that is overacting. And this is a biggie. People don't realize it. So what happens is people are monotone. When we speak normally, like let's say you work in a corporate job for 30 years and you have a family and you live your life, and then you decide you're going to narrate an audiobook. Well, your speech patterns are not always, but sometimes very likely in a corporate box in style. And so when you say, okay, now I want to finally express myself, I'm going to write this book. What happens is we go big and we tell our story, and we do what I call sparkling when we want to share our emotions and share what we're doing, which is great. but that can lead to overacting, which might make you sound cartoonish or emotionally melodramatic. So the aim is to be believable, not overly theatrical in general. We want to let the text carry the drama to support you as the voice. That ultimately, right, when you listen to a book, it's the words, it's the story, it's the meaning, it's what you're learning, it's what you're feeling that matters. The voice is there to enhance and convey emotional energy. So those are some things. Of course, there's also pacing. You can have poor pacing, which can make your listener insane. You can have flat emotions, that kind of thing. But the most important thing that I will say, the bottom line is, do not ignore your audience experience. You are speaking, and yes, it's about you, but 1,000 times more important is it's about your listener and the experience they're having. Read to them, not to the page.
I love your words, reading to them. Let me tell you a story. I always loved, what was it? Out of Africa with Meryl Streep. Do you remember that? She was her real character was a storyteller, and she would ask her listener to throw her a line, and then she'd take off of there. I always loved that in it. So I wish we went along. All right. So you talked about you sent me a note about and we've probably gone over it. We're weaving all around it, of course. The anatomy of a great narrator. So this is for you, but I think that if you're open to it, since you are a voice coach, I mean you're an agent, you know voiceovers, you know people who do this. I'm thinking that you might be recommending some once you know a book or an author or a person that could be of assistance. Would that be right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Say it again.
I've got a couple of questions. So I would kind of do it all together. Right. So we have the anatomy of a great narrator. That may be you or someone that you're considering to do the narration for you. Maybe you can go into how to evaluate an audition. That
Got you,
might be
got you.
kind of cool.
Yes,
That might be kind of
yes. When
cool.
you mean if you're looking for somebody, a narrator?
Yes, but and also let's hold the mirror up. Are you the person to do that?
Yeah.
Because when you tell someone, you really speak in a monotone. We've all been around people who are like, as exciting as watching, mud develop. But
Yeah.
that's a horrible metaphor.
No, I know what you mean.
Or grass grow, right? All
Right.
right.
Yeah.
See, come on, let's get there. Let's get there. On that. So what are some of the things to look for in others to consider to assist you, or even in yourself to really
Yeah.
it's like when my client got in the studio and he thought, oh my God, I am horrible.
Right.
I am horrible. I his coach should never have get got him there in the first place. They should have recognized that. But I wasn't the coach that put him into that. I referred them to a narrator coach. Um, that's before I knew you, Rachel. And that, and he does have energy and he does have enthusiasm, but somehow when he got in front of the microphone, it died.
Well, and that does happen. The thing is that from a coaching perspective,
Mhm.
there's a couple situations, and then I'll answer your question. But if you have somebody comes to you and says, I want to narrate my own book, it matters to my heart to do that. Then as a coach, I look at them, I'm all about self-expression. I say, okay, let's make it work. I don't know what's going to happen when people get to the studio without the experience. That's a whole nother game. That's a whole nother thing. But when you're looking at evaluating yourself or other talent, there's a couple things to look for. If you are a monotone person, with some coaching, would you be able to bring that up? And have you been told you're interesting to be with, to talk to? Are there people in your life who go, I love hanging out with mom, or I love hanging out with dad, or I have a great time playing poker with my neighbors? What is it about you that you might be able to transition in a different portion of your life to that read? So that's one thing that I would say. If
Mhm.
you're too much,
Mhm.
is that another thing? Are you a drama king or queen? Are we going to be able to
Uh,
scale that back a little bit? And if so, that's okay. but do people find you to be relatable? I think that's the number one question you have to ask yourself. Can people relate to me? Because if they can, then we can work with that. If you are a person who is told that often, people don't get you, or you are, maybe people feel that they're intimidated by you, those are two issues that I would look in the mirror at, because it's all about the connection. And those are two things that if you can scale them up or down, then people can work with that and make it be relatable.
Mhm.
Other things are, and I know this might sound insane, but a little bit of acting ability, because even
Mm,
if it's your own story, you don't have to come to your book with acting ability, but you do have to have the ability to, like when you told your story about your child, that wasn't acting ability necessarily, but you were able to
mm,
connect with your own emotions and bring it
mm,
forward. That is
mhm,
that has a lot of impact. And are you able to relate to your own material and bring that out a little bit? That is
mhm.
something else. Do you have a tone that is listenable? Are you overly
Oh,
nasal? Is there something that's going to grind on your listener for a period of time? That is a thing, you know. It is something to think about. Are you too sing-songy in the way that you read? Is it something that's going to are you
mm,
somebody they can listen to for a period of time? Because that's really important. And also, are you interested? Do you have the technical skill? Because you're going to have to end up going into a studio where somebody, it's hard. It's hard. It's a lot. Narrating your own audiobook is a lot more work than you would expect. I think the reward is huge, but it's the work in it comes from relating to your material in a different way, relating to yourself potentially in a different way, so you can bring forward what it is that you want to bring forward, and being able to sustain that in the studio. So those are kind of, the main things that I would.
I, I am really glad you brought up the studio thing. I personally can't imagine not doing it in a studio that is set up. The equipment is there. There is a sound room there. There is just a variety of things that are there, like a studio that maybe on the weekends they're doing rock bands. I mean, they understand the needs for the right acoustics on that. I am seeing more and more people pushing, oh yeah, you can do this in your home. Yeah, you can hang blankets all in a closet. Just go in a closet and hang all the blankets around to absorb the noise.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, be prepared to take off all your clothes because you're going to be
Get
sweating
hot,
in that
right?
closet.
Well, I think the
Uh,
answer to that is twofold. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is twofold, honestly. If you are a person who does not want to, who's making one audiobook, two, three, and does not want to deal with the technical stuff and doesn't mind paying somebody else to do it, I think going into a studio is the way to go. If you decide you're going to record and save a little bit at home, you really need to make sure, first of all, that's a long-term investment. I mean, you can get equipment from anywhere from $500 and up, but it's a long-term investment. You've got to figure out how to run that equipment, how to set up your studio. If you're going to be too hot in a closet, which is really tedious and uncomfortable. But if it is something that you think, I might do this and I might do podcasting and I might, want to do more things where I'm using my voice, it is a total option. But the deal with audiobook narration that is different is post-production. You have to have somebody do the post production. And even me, who has had a number of book deals, I will not coach people on post production. I have somebody I work with who will do that because
Mhm.
it requires you to be able to remove the breaths, or requires you to be able to meet ACX
Exactly.
specs and everything. So the money you're saving just recording in your home is simply, unless you are able to do post production, it is simply the recording portion. It's not post production. So then at that point, you're recording in your own home. So you spend at least $500 on the equipment, set up the blankets and everything, and now you're sending it out for post production, which is a thing. So you're going to spend money there. So it's doable. And I'm not saying you can't do it. Voice actors, we all work from home these days. Everything is run remote connection. And I'm doing a commercial today from my home. So that is a thing. And it happens all the time. Audiobook production requires more post production in a different kind of a way.
Well, it's a lot longer. It's a
Yes.
book.
Right.
everybody.
Well, and
Uh,
there is technical specs, like to upload to ACX and places like that for, distribution. There's technical specs that have to be perfect. So it's a little bit
I
different.
know. Uh, it's a challenge. It's a
Mhm.
challenge
It is.
everywhere. That what I've seen on that.
And I will tell you, it takes the average audiobook narrator, if you're doing it yourself, every hour of finished audiobook production, 3.5 hours. And that is if you have experience. When I first did my very first audiobook, it was a 30-minute book that I narrated for somebody else, and it took me 8 hours to figure out. And I cried through half of it because of the technical side of things. I was already a voice actor, so that part was easy. But it's not necessarily an easy thing to just slap a studio together and make it happen.
Yeah, see, I'm a studio girl. I just prefer to have someone, this is what they do, and they take care of the post-production too. They're there to do it.
I get it.
And my experience is that if they hear the snag, they can stop, go back, repeat, do it
Mhm.
again. And I just like that. When I walk out, I want to be like this,
Mhm.
you know, it's finished. And it's worth, to me, it's worth the money
Mhm.
in those areas. So it's a lot. It's a lot. Well, Rachel, that I think what we need to really kiss in our, like final 8 minutes or 10 minutes here is talk about really the common mistakes, the
Uh-huh.
things that will happen just because they happen.
Mhm.
How do you fix them? When is it a time to? I've told people maybe this isn't for you. I mean, I've had to say this isn't for you after
Yep.
they've tried to get in again.
You
Um,
know, uh, common mistakes are, I would say, if you are thinking of narrating your own audiobook, you
mhm.
might want to do a little coaching and then run a test. Send
Hmm.
that test off to people that you know can be honest with you and say, could you listen to this? Not your family, but friends. Not
No,
your family, because your
no.
family can't listen to you for and how to make dinner, but I'm talking about like people that you can be honest and say, I've been working with a coach for a period of time. This is what I'm thinking. If you have the luxury of time to do that,
Mhm,
is this something that you think is workable?
mhm,
That is the first thing. If you're a person who has a lot of mouth noise and clicks and those kind of things, that is something else. You definitely want to have some post production, somebody help you with that, because that's also going to make you. It's very difficult to record when you're in that scenario all the time. There's things you can do to mitigate some of that, a lot of it, but that's another thing.
mhm.
Not having enough energy is a huge common mistake. If you don't prepare, you need to do warm-ups. Like I warm up, I'm also a singer. I'm recording a video tonight, with my band, but
Lucky
yeah.
you.
So
Lucky
I
you.
warm up every day, to make sure. So you want to make sure you're prepared. The biggest thing I would say is please don't think. I'm going to give you a quick story here I think this is going to answer a lot of that questions. I worked with two gentlemen, two brothers, who wrote a fantastic book. They came to me and said, our deadline for the book is 2 months out, and we're coming to coaching for this book. And I listened to both of the brothers, and I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. And while we were working together, what they realized is a couple things. First of all, the way that their book was written did not translate to audio very well. It was extremely technical and it lacked connection in the way that it was written. And we discovered that by going through exercises about who is your audience, how do you want them to feel? So the way they had to go back and rewrite their book. And at the same time, we had one of the brothers who was very dynamic and easy to relate to, and another who had a more monotone financial style. And so we had to really work with both of those guys to look at our content and say, okay, the brother
Mm,
that's more dynamic is going to read things that might be more financial. We're going to have the one that's more connecting read things that might be less connecting. We're going to have them do opposites than they thought. So this way it just balances a little bit more. So all of those
mm,
kind of little things are things to think about.
mhm. Well, I think that there's a lot you can all do. I mean, you talked about warm up. I think it's a good idea to warm up.
Oh, for
Different
sure.
and so what are some of the tips and tricks? And do you have some tips and tricks
Huh?
or when our voice gets tired.
Yes. Okay, so tips and tricks. The very first thing is if you can see me, you want to make sure that when you're speaking, you're sitting up straight, as we talked about earlier, Judith, using your physicality, lifting your face and that smile. That is a
Mhm.
position you should get used to being in. It's not that we want to strain the neck or the vocal cords, but if you are in a slouch position when you're speaking, you're not supporting your vocal cords. This is going to cause vocal fatigue as time goes on. Also, 5 minutes, maybe when you're making your bed in the morning or something, some basic gently, gently, just to stretch those cords a little bit. Your voice is a muscle. And so you want to make sure to keep it engaged. So often we don't use it in a way that is, for speaking other than to the people that are close to us. So it's not prepared for that kind of usage. Articulation exercises are a good thing. We don't want to over articulate, but we do want to have our lips used to moving, especially as we get older, because the lips they can be more difficult to work with as time goes on. So, a, e, I, o, u, a, e, I, o, u, a little bit of that is really good. When your voice does get tired, a couple things. I have tea, far too much tea in my life because I'm using my voice all the time. Yeah, it's far too much, but it's warm. So you don't want to have cold things, ice cubes and those sorts of things warm down at the end of the day. So it's a little bit of a, ooh. And when your voice is tired, take it easy. Don't
Ooh,
overdo
ooh,
it.
ooh, ooh. I want to hear your warm down. Do it again.
Oh, so you start at the top of a pitch and go down very gently.
Ooh, okay.
Just a couple. Remember, if your voice, imagine it's being tense by vibrating back and forth with the air going through to create the sound. So we want to, it's almost like a little bit of wind going through gently, just to say voice. It's like a soft
Yep.
little padding.
Oh my God, I remember doing Rachel. I remember even on my hands and knees doing some of those
Oh,
things when I was working,
yeah.
to do that. So, all right. Well, a lot of information. How do people find you?
My website is rachelalena.com, RACHELALENA.com. And so you can go there and reach out. I'd love to chat with you, however I can be
Well,
helpful.
I can highly recommend all of us working on our voices. And I shared with Rachel, as we come into our last minute here, that literally when I'm in events, I have a lot of times when I'm around men, they will tell me they can hear me where they can't hear a lot of the other women because their
Mhm.
voices have gone up higher. So you really need to think of who you're working with, who your audience is, because your voice counts. And Rachel, you count too. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
with
It's my
us.
pleasure. Thanks for
All right.
meeting.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Author You, Your Guide to Book Publishing. I'm Judith Briles. Keep writing, keep publishing, and remember your voice.